Welcome back to the tutorials. So in the previous tutorial we started setting up the initialization of our cutscene here that's going to happen when we enter the kingdom. And we want to continue to do that, of course. But first I'm going to create a grouping here so that this will be easy to port later on. Right? So if we want to have a cutscene begin at another scene, or just throw a cutscene in the middle of something, we can actually copy this code and modify it later on. And that's the beauty of how we're setting up our code for this game. So we're going to call this one cutscene Jane and Henry initialize. All right, and let's move all of this underneath here. Okay. So in order to do a cutscene correctly, we need to wrestle the control away from the user. Now, the way we've been doing that recently is we've been using two pieces of code, right? One, we do our, let me bring it up here, bob EE. Let's bring this up. We've been setting our stop bob equal to 0, and then we've also been adding an ignore controls piece of code. We're going to try to get this down to one piece of code just using the stop bob here by adding a sub event underneath here that gives control back to the user. In other words, we go to control, ignore default controls of Bob. We want to set this equal to no, because we don't want to ignore the controls here, when stop Bob is equal to 0. Okay, so when it's equal to 0, we can move. Now let's add another parent event, right? Make sure it's not underneath this. It's not a child of stop Bob equals 0. We're going to copy and paste this, set this and set our condition equal to 1, and change our ignore default controls equal to yes. So now when we go into our kingdom here, we can simply add the change of one variable of gmanager.stopBob equal to 1, and now Bob should stop. Let's run a preview here. Okay, now I can move Bob. That means that something went wrong. But, you know, we're getting pretty good at programming and debugging here. So let's figure out what went wrong. Now I can't move Bob now. So the stop Bob is working for the fade screen. So let's bring up our fade screen code here. And that's under game mechanics, fade the screen. Okay, when start of game is equal to 1, the game has already started there. When the fade screen is less than or equal to 0, we want to delete the timer. Good. Aha. Here's the culprit right there. As soon as the fade screen is gone, it gives the control back to the user. So let's do a couple of things here. One, this piece is now redundant. We don't need that. Let's copy this entire section here and paste it in so we've got two identical sections. But let's add a new condition here so that this piece will still work when we want it to, when we are going in and out of a scene. But this will be different with a different condition. Let's add the condition here. Global variable gmanager.cutsceneStart. When that equals 1, we don't want to give the control back to the user. So let's delete this. Let's copy this, paste it in, and say when cutscene is equal to 0, meaning we're not in a cutscene, let's go ahead and give the user back the ability to move. All right, well, before we do a preview, actually, we never initiated cutscene here. So let's do that. Let's copy and paste this here, and let's change this to cut scene start. Now we've initialized the cutscene. It knows that we're in the middle of a cutscene here. Let's run a preview. All right, I can't move Bob. Perfect. We've wrestled control away from the user here. Now, let's start working on our actual cut screen, or cut scene, excuse me. So let's go bring it up if we haven't already. Here's our cut scene. And right off the bat, I know that I want to move Bob down, right? So if we look at let's look at that one there. If we look at this cutscene here, I want the first thing to happen that Bob moves down here and stops on the same Y plane as Jane Waldorf. That means we're going to be using a timer to move Bob down. All right, let's be organized. Let's add a new group here, and let's call it move Bob down. Now let's add a sub condition underneath that. And I'm going to bring in a timer here, value of a scene timer. We're going to do it in 1 second intervals, and we're going to be somewhat obnoxious with the name a little bit here, but that's because we don't want these timers to get confused at all. So we're going to say Jane and Henry dot move Bob down. Okay. So every second it's going to do a check of some sort. Let's add 2 subconditions here. We're going to need 2. First one we're going to check is whether or not the position, the Y position of Bob is less than, because when you're going down the screen you're adding Y. So as long as the Y position, excuse me, as long as the Y position of Bob is less than, and our scene variable, right, not a global, it's scene variable, Jane Waldorf dot position Y, as long as it's less than Jane's Y position, we're going to move Bob down by adding to his Y position. And we'll copy this and paste it in and say when it's equal to Jane's, right, we're going to pause this timer. We'll delete it when this is done. I mean, we could probably delete it now, but I'm just going to pause it for right now. And that's Jane and Henry dot move Bob down. All right, the last thing I want to happen here in this sequence is I want Bob to move his head to the right so that he can address, or Jane can address him. Okay, so that's easy enough. We just change the sprite's direction, change the direction of Bob, and facing right equals 0 degrees, so equals 0. And when it's less than, we want to move Bob down, so we'll say let's do 2 things here. let's, I'm going to do this in the order here, or what? Yeah, let's do it this way. Let's position Y position of Bob. We want to add 1. And I also want to set Bob's variable position here. Global variable. Bob position Y equal to Bob's position, so that that stays in a 1-to-1 ratio. They're both the same. The Y position of Bob. Okay, whew, that's a lot. All right, well, we need to initiate this timer. I'm going to initiate the timer actually in our kingdom code right here. So that's the last thing we're going to do here is we're going to initiate our timer. So start or reset the timer, and that's Gene and Henry.move Bob down. All right, let's run a test. Let's see how we did. All right, last thing I want to do here to really round out this tutorial is, did you notice that Bob's eyes never moved as he was going down? Well, that's kind of different than the way he usually moves, right? So we can run the animation during our timer, actually. We can do that. I believe we just go to Sprite Animation, play the animation. And I want to say it's, let's see, Bob, play animation. Let's see if that does it. If we go to the kingdom layout for Bob here, I think his animation is already set to walking Bob anyway. Let's see if that does it, or if we need to change it to animation number 1 and then play it. Let's see really quick. Yeah, okay. So we need to change his animation, I think, first. Whoops. Bob equals to 1. I believe that'll do it. If not, we can change it by name as well. There we go. See, we gotta stop the animation there at the end, and then we'll do that. We'll do that here, and we'll stop. All right. So let's copy and paste this, and let's say pause the animation of Bob. All right. Okay, nicely done. We're starting to make progress here.